we are presenting an award at this point, the Professional Excellence Award, to a correspondent who we all know very well and watch. Chief National Security Correspondent for Fox News. She reports daily from the Pentagon, where she questions senior military leaders, travels to war zones, provides extensive coverage of the wars in Israel and Ukraine, and again, brings people together when they may have nothing in common or everything in common. Jennifer Griffin.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. It's such an honor for me to be recognized by a group that loves foreign correspondence as much as I do. My happiest days were serving as a foreign correspondent with my husband, Greg Myrie, who's here. He works for NPR, but we were overseas for about 20 years covering stories together. And in fact, the series of stories that we are winning the award for tonight is about Afghanistan. And Greg and I first went to Afghanistan in 1994. In fact, we had our honeymoon in Kabul. So we've had a very long relationship and important relationship to Afghanistan. And you know, television is about team. You never do a story alone. And I have one of the best teams in the business. I have a wonderful producer, Liz Frieden, a producer extraordinaire at the Pentagon, and Krista Garvin. They brought me this story, and it's a story that I'll tell you a little bit about. Abdul Wasi Safi was an Afghan commando who had been highly trained, worked with the Green Berets in Afghanistan, and had fought to the bitter end against the Taliban. His brother had been a translator, a special immigrant visa holder who moved to Houston. And when Kabul fell, Abdul Wasi Safi was one of the many people who had worked with the US government who was left behind. And he fought to the end, and he thought, okay, now I'm gonna go to America. So what did he do? He managed to make his way to Brazil, and he walked and took buses and made his way through 10 countries from Brazil all the way to the Rio Grande. And he got to the Rio Grande after a harrowing journey. He'd been beaten, he'd been robbed, suspected of being a terrorist along the way. He makes it across the river, and he puts his hands up, and he thinks, oh, they're gonna welcome me as a hero. I'm here, I'm in America. And instead, he gets handcuffed, and he gets taken to a detention center. And that's when Krista and Liz found out about his story, and he was being mistreated. He had medical needs that weren't being attended to, and we talked to his brother Sammy, and we started to tell his story, and we brought together a couple of a very unlikely group of bipartisan congressional leaders, the late Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, and Michael Waltz and Dan Crenshaw. You wouldn't think they'd have a lot in common, but they jumped on this story. They lobbied the White House, the DHS, and after 5 months, Abdul Wasi Safi was freed as a result of this series of stories. And it really reminds us all, those who think that AI can replace reporters or replace journalists, these are the kind of human stories that AI can't tell. And I want to shout out to thank you. AI is never going to be able to tell Abdul Wasi Safi's story and get the results that we did. He is now free and in the United States and driving an Uber and making the beginning of his life, as many do. But I just want to say that there also are local journalists who need to be protected. And the reporters at the Texas Tribune were the first to report on Wasi's story. And I think we all recognize that we need local reporters. I want to thank my bosses, Jay Wallace, Brian Boughton, Nunu Japries, who are here tonight thank you for letting me tell these stories. These are important stories, and I have your backing, and it means so much to me. I think, I spent 7 years covering the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. My 2 daughters were born in Jerusalem, and I think often of the Hebrew saying, save a life and you save the world. And that's what we do when we tell stories. I spoke to Sammy and Abdul Wasi Safi. I called them before Thanksgiving to see how they were doing, and they were so very grateful. They were grateful to all the journalists who have told the stories of Afghanistan, and they begged me to plead with journalists not to forget about Afghanistan. So thank you for this award. I dedicate it to all the foreign correspondents who are out there on the front lines telling these important stories. Thank you.